Okay, I promised the two for today. This won't be a real long video, and this, I don't know, this might not even be of interest to everybody. In fact, for sure it isn't. It's kind of a health video, kind of a cautionary tale, something I dealt with a couple of years ago. So, if you're my age, or around my age, and you grew up in the 70s and 80s, everybody's suntanned. By the way, welcome tillbaka, tack för sist. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the comments, by the way. I've been loving reading them. If you grew up in the 70s and 80s, everybody suntanned all the time. I mean, it was crazy. We used to go out and we'd get up on rooftops or lay out on the decks of our apartments in college, slather baby oil on us till we fried to a crisp. I remember once, I did this actually a few times. I was at Rick's College. This would have been probably the spring of '85. And if you're familiar with Rexburg, Idaho, it's a cold place in the winter, very cold. We used to call it Planet Iceberg. And the spring is slow in coming there. And I was heading home. The school year was out, the spring semester was out somewhere around the 20th of April. I don't remember exactly when. This is 41 years ago. But I wanted to get tanned. And so I found a spot between our apartment buildings, kind of cove in the apartments, where they kind of came together, and it was blocked from the wind, and there was snow everywhere, but this little area melted because the sun hit it. And I started laying out there every day. I remember getting home in the spring of '85, and people were like, "Did you go to the Bahamas? Why are you so tan?" Anyway, that just kind of sets the path of what we did back then. It was nuts. Everybody went to tanning salons. I had lots of friends in college that went to tanning salons. I even did it a few times myself. But I always felt it was kind of cheating. So I would do the baby oil and, of course, burn myself all the time. That leads to my story. So now, 40-something years later, you start realizing that everything you do in life, there's consequences. Every motion has an equal and opposite motion. That's not right. I used to know these laws of physics down pat. Anyway, you get what I'm getting at, and one of you, I'm sure, will tell me what it is. I know it, it's just not popping into my head. So, I have quite a bit of moles, freckles on me. Not so much on my face, but my chest and my belly, and just it's not like anything crazy. It's just something you're born with or you're not. And so about, I don't know, maybe, well, actually, when I seriously decided I'm going to start going to a dermatologist, I remember seeing a mole that I thought, that doesn't look right. And so I went to a dermatologist. I set up the appointment. She's a little short woman. Really cool doctor. I like her a lot. She's very, so many doctors these days, they don't give a crap. They're just like checking boxes, getting you through. So when I find a doctor I like, I go back to them. I like old school. I like being able to talk to my doctor and not feel like I'm a number being pushed through. And this lady is very friendly and nice, and she sincerely seems to care. At least she comes across like she cares and she's interested in you. So anyway, you get a gown on, and she starts checking all my moles, and I pointed out the couple that I was concerned about, and she says, "Oh, those aren't problems. No problem." And they're just different types. And I started getting dressed, and I was like, I had my shirt on, and I said, "Hey, I actually forgot one." And because she was pretty short, when she stood beside me, she couldn't really see on top of my shoulders. And I said, "I have one on my shoulder. I actually don't think it's anything, but do you mind checking?" And she goes, "Yeah, of course. Let's check everything." So I sat down so she could see my shoulder, and she looked at it, and the first thing she said was, "Oh." And I was like, "Oh, crap. That's not the sound you want to hear from your doctor." And I was like, "What?" She said, "We need to do a biopsy of this immediately." And I'm like, "Okay, that doesn't sound good." And she says, "Well, I don't want to, alarm you or anything. We don't know anything. Let's do a biopsy." And she literally numbed it up and took a slice out of my shoulder. just a little thin slice of the mole. They called me, I think it was the next day. This was in April of 2024. In fact, I remember the day of the surgery. It was April 17th. So this would have been like April 12th or 13th. And I'm on the road a lot for work. And she calls me and she says, we need to get you in to do surgery on that. It's melanoma. And my mom had melanoma, and even though I know what she went through and they took a giant chunk out of her leg, I still just kind of associate it with skin cancer. And I'm not belittling or saying skin cancer is nothing, but they're not the same thing. Melanoma, if you're not familiar, can get into your tissues, into your organs, and spread throughout your body. The roots can get down. It's actually a pretty scary thing. So I said, well, I'm going out of town. We're going on a camping trip with a bunch of friends on the 17th of April. I'll be back on like the 21st. Then I leave for a couple weeks for work. And she says, no, we don't want to wait for any of that. And I said, well, I'm leaving in 4 days. And she says, then we're getting you in before that. So on the day of the 17th, which is the day we were going down to Mesquite, Nevada to go riding in our ATVs with a bunch of friends. Sorry, YouTube just popped up some test I was running. So she said, yeah, this is not something we want to mess around with. This is serious. And I was like, oh shit, you're kind of freaking me out now. So I called my mom and I said, they've got me scheduled for the 17th in 4 days. She does not want me to wait a day longer than that. And my mom, said, well, when I went through mine, my doctor looked at mine, because my parents go back to Norway for a month almost every summer. They're starting to do it less as they get older, but they were still doing it for a month, 6 weeks. And her doctor said, you should be fine. We'll check on it when you get back. Well, when she got back, it had changed significantly. And it was in the calf of her leg. And I'm not kidding when I say the chunk that they took out of her leg, even now 20 some years later, I could put my fist into the hole where the tissue they took out. They took calf muscle. They went deep because they wanted to make sure. So my mom told me, when you talk to your doctor, tell them to go deeper than they think they should. So it's right here. I could show you the scar, but it's kind of irrelevant. I go in, they numb up my shoulder. They did the surgery right there in the office. And before she started, I said, listen, I just want to pass on what my mom said and what her doctor said. Go deeper than you think you need to. I want to make sure it's gone. And so they numbed it all up and started cutting, and it is such a weird sensation. If you've ever had pieces of you ripped out, I mean, you feel tugging, burning. It was a very strange sensation. But it was all numb, so I felt no pain, just kind of queasiness. When they were done, the assistant said it probably took 20 minutes maybe. And the assistant says, would you like to see what we took out? And I said, I don't know, do I? And she says, well, it's up to you. And I says, you know what? My curiosity's got the better of me. I want to see it. So if you've ever taken an orange, a good size orange, and cut it into wedges, what she showed me looked like an orange wedge, a pretty big orange wedge. And they had sewed it back together at this point. And I said, how could you possibly have taken that big a chunk out of my shoulder and be able to sew it back together? That sounds nuts. And they said, it is very tight. You don't want to be doing anything crazy. And I said, well, I'm going riding. They're like, you should be okay. You just don't want to, be straining yourself really hard because you could rip the stitches. So I'm like, okay, great. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you one of the biggest parts. Before the surgery starts, she says, okay, we've looked at the biopsy. No, that's not true. This came after. I'm sorry. I'm out of order. So I go on my trip. I get down to Mesquite. I hadn't looked at it yet because it was bandaged up, and I asked my wife to help me change the Band-Aid. When she took it off and I was standing without my shirt in front of the mirror, I almost threw up when I saw it. It was just bruised. Well, I don't want to go into graphic detail because I'll make some of you sick, but it was not pretty. It was very ugly. Right after that, we meet up with a couple of my friends, and they don't know any of this has happened. And one of my buddies walks up and grabs me in a bear hug and starts patting me right there. And it hurts so bad, no sound came out of my mouth. Have you ever had that happen? You're like, and no sound. And then all of a sudden I screamed and tears were coming. I wasn't crying, but tears were running down. And he stepped back and he's like, what the hell? And I said, it's not your fault. And I'm trying to talk. I said, I just had surgery there and it's extremely tender. It hurt for quite a while after that. But for several days, excuse me, I took pictures of it and sent it to my doctor and said, is it supposed to look like this? This looks really bad. I thought it was infected, and she said, no, that's totally normal, and it healed, but it hurt for, I mean, it's 27, 28 months ago now, and it's finally calming down, but because she took so many nerves out, it hurt for a long time. Like it would just, not constantly, but it'd be like somebody was stabbing a knife into my shoulder. And here's the part that freaked me out. So we get back from this trip, and they had sent that whole chunk that they took out of my shoulder into some lab, or a couple of labs. And she says, it came back, we're pretty sure we got everything. The good thing is, with this type of melanoma, you have a 95% chance of survival. And I'm like, I know you're telling me like that's a good thing. But in my mind, I walked into this office with, I don't know, a 1 in 100,000 chance of dying today, a 1 in a million chance. And now you're telling me there's a 1 in 20 chance that I don't make it? I don't get depressed very often. I'm a pretty happy, positive guy. I came back home and I was just sitting in the yard, and my wife asked me what was going on. I think I drank a bottle of wine that night. I don't drink wine very often. I was in a bit of a state of shock. And when I told her what had happened and what she had said, she says, well, that's a good thing. You know, it's 95%. I'm like, I know that's supposed to be a good thing. But that means there's a 5% chance I'm not going to be here in, I can't remember what she said, a 2-year period or something like that. That was scary as hell to me. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but 1 in 20, that's not what you want to hear. I've gone back regularly, every 6 months. She keeps checking it. She checks everything else. She says everything's good. Last checkup, she says, you know what? I think we can start doing it once a year. But here's where I want, if anybody has dealt with this is what I want to tell you. A really good, well, my son-in-law's dad had cancer. Kind of went through the process I did, every 6 months a checkup, every 6 months checkup. And he got 2 or 3 years in, and they said, you know what? You're good to come once a year now. He went back after that year. The cancer had come back and spread throughout his body, and that was it. So I asked my doctor respectfully, I would like to come every 6 months if you're okay with that. And I told her that story, and she says, whatever you're comfortable with. So I'm gonna go every 6 months for the rest of my life, or as long as I'm able. If you deal with anything like this, don't just take it lightly. I've known people that are like, if I don't go in and don't get it checked, it's not gonna be a problem. I've talked about this before. One of my very good friends died 9 years ago at 44 years old. Heartbreaking. He had something wrong. He knew something was wrong, and it got put off because he's a tough guy, and he is a tough guy. But it got to the point where it was too late. So if you deal with anything like that, you see weird things on your body, don't wait. Go in and get it checked. I'm tempted to go on, I said this would be a shorter video. I'm tempted to talk a little bit about another health thing, but I'll save it for another day. It's something that I think is very serious as well. So I hope I didn't bring anybody down. I'm just trying to put it out there as, if this helps one person watches this and says, you know, I got that weird growth or mole or lesion or whatever, I should probably get it checked out. If that happens and one person gets checked and it helps them, then this video is worth it. Don't take your life for granted. It's a beautiful life. Fight for it. Be there for your family and your friends. It was a very emotional time for me. Because even though I know no day is guaranteed, things got real. S got real, as I said. And all of a sudden I was facing mortality at 60 years old. I don't know how long I'm going to live, and I'm going to take every day for what it is, a blessing. But hopefully that bought me a whole bunch of more years. But we take what we're given, right? So hopefully that helps somebody. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I do not take it for granted. The fact that you take any of your time to watch me humbles me, and I appreciate it. I hope you'll have a beautiful day. Take care of yourselves. Tack för denna gång, men snackas igen snart. Peace. Love.